All right, chapter 1819. Here we are coming out of World War II, and the United States finds itself with some domestic issues and domestic concerns that have to be reconciled, have to be addressed. We also find ourselves with a growing geopolitical competitor known as the Soviet Union and Joseph Stalin's rise to world domination in this conflicting, opposing worldviews of what is called democratic democracy and rights and communism, totalitarian control. And we're going to combat or try to combat, preserve, defend, and spread democracy. At the same time, the communist movement is going to try to do the same and spread communism in order to keep up with, in order to compete with this geopolitical foe. The United States begins an arms race of stockpiling munitions and weapons and nuclear technology post Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Likewise, the Soviet Union does the same thing. They continue to spread communism, they continue to imperialize, they continue to rearm, they continue to stockpile weapons as well. And it also creates a race in scientific technology. In other words, who can get to the moon first, who can deploy a satellite into space first. So we're really crossing over into a very competitive 40-year experience, which has these Cold War confrontations too, which amount to an actual war, such as the Korea War and the Vietnam War. But it's going to be a battle to stop the spread of communism. And it's going to play a toll on the American home front. From what we saw during World War II of a patriotic, all together, let's defeat this symbol of hatred and Nazism, to war weariness, and can we stop fighting communism eventually? Because it's going to take its toll. On the inside of America, we have a social movement that is brewing. We know from previous chapters that there has been this section of our country that has been able to preserve a segregated society. And we know that following World War II, things were going to be different in regards to African Americans were called upon, not only on the battlefield, but on the home front, to play their part. Well, in doing so, there's some reconciliation that needs to take place throughout southern states, an end to Jim Crow, in other words, an end to discrimination, an end to segregation. During the New Deal coalition that FDR was able to build under the Democrat Party, he was able to bring in African Americans to the Democrat Party. However, this Democrat Party still has some old, solid Southern leadership that at every chance blocks any civil rights legislation. So by the time we get post-World War II, what we're going to see is a call for the national government to recognize, and the call for state leaders to recognize the rights of not only the minority races of people in the United States, but the gender of people as well. So we'll see a shift in this Democratic Party. Under FDR, we saw it shift to a welfare state from an economical standpoint, that the government must intervene in the everyday lives of Americans. Well, now this Democrat Party is going to shift into a more of a liberalism, is what it's referenced to, with some identity politics in regards to race and gender, for the progress of equality, for the progress of denouncing and ending discrimination and segregation throughout large portions of the southern part of our United States are very deep-rooted, still segregated societies. So we're going to launch into a activism movement led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and along with other civil rights leaders to kind of get this civil rights movement going. We're going to see some conformity throughout the 1950s of kind of like we saw in the 1920s, but on a larger scale, because we have television, in which this is the so-called occupation of the American housewife, We're going to see that this is the so-called occupation of the American father. This is the perfect family, the perfect house, the white picket fence out front, the two-car garage, this is the automobile you should have. This is the affluent neighborhood you should live in. And it really kind of creates an American culture for largely one group of Americans, and that would be white Americans. And it also marginalizes the gap, the economic gap between those who are able to be part of this affluent society and those who are still on the fringes, trying to make some economic recovery or trying to make some economic gains. So we're going to see a widening of that gap, and a lot of that is due to the readiness of the technology that was discovered during World War II, very similar to the mass production that we saw continue after World War I, the availability of goods. We're going to bring back this consumerism movement, but we're going to add materialism to it. In other words, you can consume the goods that you need, but now you not only have that, but now you got to get the needs you want, or consume the material that you want. So now not only are you fulfilling your consuming needs, but you're also fulfilling your material wants, and it really creates a buying, powerful economy in the United States as well. Other than that, there's much more to talk about throughout the 1950s, but those are some of your key points in this introduction.